Did the Knicks miss their window?
No.
Was this loss their missed opportunity, and now the panic meters in front of you, and you think about clicking it because of all the talk has been made about trading Cat, firing Tom Thibodeau, and making a major move?
This should be, in theory, I'm sorry, Riv, the worst the Knicks are going to be over the next 2-3 years, in theory. Yes, this was their best chance to go to the finals.
Explain that a little bit more.
This is the first year that they're together, and they just went to the ECF. Jalen Brunson continues to get better. You have Mikal Bridges, and you're going to have OG Anunoby, or assuming Mikal Bridges stays with this team. And again, with Karl Anthony Towns allegedly being a trade asset, with the first-round picks that you can go and attach to him, you can go and you can try and improve this roster. Either which way you shake it, this is a talented team. I look at the foundational pieces. OG Anunoby was pretty great for a great portion of this postseason. Defensively, obviously, what he was able to give credit where credit is due to Pascal. Pascal was able to overwhelmingly assert himself in this series. There was not much that any defender on the Knicks could have done. But again, I thought we saw Mikal in the first two series really show his value to the team. Jalen Brunson, we don't have to talk about. We understand what he means to the team. But again, Karl Anthony Towns, who is going to be in everybody's trade packages, not me. Not me personally, but again, if you can go and get Giannis, Giannis is Giannis. But for Karl Anthony Towns, who had been a pretty great player for the Knicks offensively, defensively, we understand his woes there. But there are ways for this team to get better. You understand that there are pieces that you can add to this bench that you can get better. With Jalen Brunson taking a hit to his pay cut, or taking a hit to his salary, there are going to be moves in the margins that the Knicks are going to be able to make. At least you would hope so. I look at this Knicks team and think, yes, I'm disappointed that you didn't go to the finals. Would you have gone to the finals and people had thought you were going to win it? No. Nobody would have taken you over Oklahoma City. But this was your chance to go there. I still think that I'm not looking at this as a missed opportunity because, again, nobody had them beating Boston. So that was gravy. I'm disappointed that you didn't go because once you beat the team that was the scary monster, we're all anticipating that now you become the favorites, and now, yes, you underwhelmed us with your performance in the ECF. But again, I think that this is going to be the worst version of this new version Knicks that we're going to see over these next couple of years, and still believe that Leon Rose is going to do what's best possible for, or what's in their best interest for the New York Knicks, and they're going to continue to get better.
I think this is a tough question to ask now, because I do think the Knicks have an opportunity to fiddle around the margins in the offseason, work on what needs to get better. I also think at the same time, you're looking at a defense that has a Cat and Brunson, so it's always going to have this disadvantage against certain teams. You're looking at a team like Indiana, who's probably going to have that core for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So that's an offense that's going to give you trouble. Like we mentioned before, Detroit gave you pretty much hell in the first round. That's a team that can get better. Don't know what they're going to look like next year. The Cavs are always going to be hanging around. But I think they have a window next year because even though they did beat Boston, if Boston was to come back healthy this offseason, we're still looking at them as probably, if not the favorites, one of the favorites to come out the East. They're still an extremely elite team. But that's a team that's going to miss Tatum for most of next year. You don't know what's going to happen in Porzingis this summer.
His ass is gone.
Yeah, Drew Holiday's a year older, so that's another guy you got to think about. Yeah, so Boston's going to be in like a retool, rebuild there. So really the East is going to be wide open again for an opportunity for the Knicks to make a run. And I think if they make a few moves around the margin, they can do that. You know, I think a reliable backup guard is really in need for them. I don't want to say Brunson didn't improve in the regular season as a playmaker, but you still saw his playmaking limitations in the playoffs. And I do think OG and Mikal played well when he wasn't on the court. I also do think a lot of the offense is geared to just Brunson make a play, Brunson go score, Brunson be a hero ball. I do think they need a little bit more creativity. I also think defensively they have to figure out what they're going to do with the Cat and Brunson roster because those two out there, it really, you can point it to effort, you can point it to just not good of it. I can see two things are both true. Also, the amount of exertion, like I mentioned, with Jalen Brunson on offense, he's not going to have that same juice defensively. And then Cat has just never been that sound defensively at the 5. That's just not him. And then you have to also worry about Mitch. And I know he had a pretty great playoffs, but it's always going to be that nervousness, that scare with his injury concern. But I don't think the window is closed. I don't think they missed it. I just think it's still the same place where you thought it was before. Like this small crack of hope that if you make a few more moves, like you mentioned, you trust in what Leon Rose has done over the past couple of seasons. But I still think they have another year to get this right. But the team that they just lost to, they're gonna probably be hanging around next year. And you still have other teams also that's on the come up.
The window hasn't closed, but it's most definitely a missed opportunity.
For sure.
I don't think the team was fully maximized this year with the lineups that Tibbs had out there. Since January 1st, the starting five with Josh Hart in the starting five, because I know it changed throughout the playoffs against Indiana, just in that series. Since January 1st, they were minus 0.1.4 points worse per 100 possessions with the starting five. Now, it's not a big drop-off, but it is a drop-off. And when your starting five is supposed to be your best lineup, you usually don't want that to be a negative. Heading into Game 6, that five-man lineup was a minus 33 in the playoffs. It wasn't functional. The idea of Cat in New York was ideally you wanted to run a five-out offense. You wanted the big to be away from the paint to open driving lanes. What ended up happening is Josh Hart can't shoot. So that big is parked on Josh Hart, and that rim protector is never taken out of the paint. There was never a five-out offense ran. Cat shot 4.7 threes per game. That's the worst mark that he shot since 2019. Dante last year for the Knicks attempted 9 threes. He just shot so much. Every time he got the ball, it was going up.
For real.
And Cat, we weren't able to fully maximize his offensive skill set. And when you have, I would say, two horrible defenders in Brunson and Cat, but Josh Hart's also a bad defender. When you have three bad defenders in your starting lineup,
Dude, Denny clears.
you're going to see
That was never a question.
how bad the defense ends up becoming. You need to maximize the offense first if the defense is something you're giving up. And Tom Thibodeau, all playoffs long, didn't maximize the offense. You maximize the offense by putting Deuce McBride in there, not another big, and having two bigs, because it's the same issue with Mitchell Robinson. You don't have that sort of spacing, but you have better defense. Deuce McBride was the perfect balance, and that lineup was never experimented with. So I think for a team that starters led the NBA in minutes per game and minutes played, that were the healthiest team in the NBA, Cat had a clean bill of health. OG and Anunoby had a clean bill of health. It's a missed opportunity because that sort of injury luck, staying healthy, is not always guaranteed on a year-to-year basis, especially when your starters are playing that many minutes. With the flexibility the Knicks currently have, the most they can do is add a mid-level exception player to this roster. They don't have any draft picks, so they're not going to bring any player through the draft. So it's either make a trade and sign a mid-level player, or just keep the same core and bring on a mid-level player onto the team. And that could be anyone
Josh
from...
Hart's the guy, I'm assuming.
Josh Hart is the first guy I'm looking at to trade because I don't think he brings anything valuable to the team outside of rebounding. But
And Hart.
he's a 6'4" rebounder.
Can I give a hot take? Is Mitch not for sale?
He should be.
Mitchell Robinson is going to be the name people point to because of his injury history, the contract he has coming up. He is too valuable.
Mainly because of what he just showed in the playoffs. You're never going to have Mitch at this value to trade again.
I also don't think that there's trades available that would make this Knicks team better
How
without
about we
Mitch.
give you Kuminga?
You're not
My
gonna be able
goodness.
to afford it, probably.
Mitchell Robinson's on a great contract. It is expiring. That's what I'm saying. The Knicks kind of are in a space now where their hands are tied behind their backs. Brunson took a great deal, and that has been a big fortune for the Knicks because they've been able to stay under the second apron because he is significantly underpaid. But Cat makes a lot of money, and I don't think it's worth trading him unless you're getting a star back. OG Anunoby is making a lot of money.
Can't
The
trade.
Mikal Bridges extension is coming up.
Could have drafted Walter
You
Payton.
have to make a decision on him. And then Josh Hart is making $19 million per season. And then Mitchell Robinson's extension is coming up. I just think that the most easy trade is probably with Mitch because he's valuable. But Josh Hart is the glaring negative with the team right now that we can significantly improve if we get somebody that's better than him. So for me, I think like a little move that I would make probably would just be trying to trade for Herb Jones. I would send Josh Hart and then the 2 first, try to go get Herb Jones. Who knows if the Pelicans
Send
accept
them
that?
back to New Orleans.
Josh Hart, yeah. And Herb Jones, I
for the
think,
podcast.
would complete the lineup. He doesn't offer that consistent spacing, but he's an elite defender. And that's something that if we have Mikal, OG, and Herb Jones, I think that's a pretty incredible defense. But the Knicks, they have some decisions to make, and it's not going to get any easier building on from here. I think it's always it's simpler to build the team to compete, but once you're in this mode where you're one of the Final Four teams, it's very hard to get over the hump.
Do you think the Pelicans would part ways with Trey?
He's available.
Not for anything in New York.
Would you give up Mitch Robinson and multiple picks to get Trey?
The contracts wouldn't work. We would have to add.
Trey gets 25.
We would have
Is
to
he?
add Hart and Mitch
his
probably.
Would you do it?
I would think about it, but the thing with Trey is he don't play no defense.
And I think on top of that, would the Pelicans even think about it?
That's what I'm asking.
You get 2 pick swaps, maybe.
But then you you said Josh Hart and Mitch.
Both their, Mitch
Well,
expires.
I'll be
next
honest
year.
with you.
And the Pelicans
I'm
kinda
okay
wanna be
if
competitive.
Trey Murphy's my worst defender of the 3 wings I have.
But now you have Brunson, Trey Murphy, and Cat.
And you still have Zion. So
Trey's
like, now you
not
have Mitch in them.
he's not no cone, but he also is going to be a fucking
He
sniper.
also played with the Pelicans. So like,
Trey Murphy is a pretty below average defender.
I'd
give him
rather
a
have
grain of
Herb.
salt.
If I was them, I'd rather have
the
Herb.
Pelicans were garbage.
But the
I mean,
year,
Herb is
the year
Herb, of
before, he
course.
wasn't a good defender,
True.
and they won 49 games.
That's also you're not.
They hide him on defense. They put him on the worst player.
He's 6'8".
This
Yeah,
year,
he
this
should be
year
a
he
defender.
took the responsibility of guarding, and he got fried. So for
mad.
him,
Respect Ryan.
his best role is more so as a helper, and he's not a strong rebounder.
How about a sneaky guy, Jose Alvarado?
Doesn't move the needle.
Well, you got to make small moves. Think small right now.
That's fine. All the moves for the Knicks right now that I've seen are like getting Chris Paul at the MLE. That's the moves that I've
Okay.
seen.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because the Knicks didn't have like this, 5-year window realistically to win a championship. Even still, like going into the season, I think most people expected, even you, Joel, who's one of the biggest Knicks fans I know, especially after this run, probably second round exit to Boston. Of course, they beat Boston, so then the expectations definitely changed. That's why viewing this Knicks season is so hard because, like, on one hand, it's definitely a success, right? Like, you've witnessed so many bad Knicks teams, so many bad coaching staffs and poor front offices and just bad rosters that you look at this team now who just made the first ECF in 25 years. It's like, holy shit, like, this was one of the best runs. This is the best season you've ever seen from New York. So, like, obviously it's a success. But then once you beat Boston and you're in the Eastern Conference Finals and you're favored against Indiana, you're like, holy shit, we have an opportunity to go to the NBA Finals. And Drew's right. Like, if you went to the finals, you'd still be massive, massive underdogs, right? Like, the Thunder would still be the overwhelming favorites and no one would have expected you to win the championship. So that's why it's hard because on one hand, it's like this season was obviously a success. Like, there's no other way around it. But while I agree with you that this team should only get better because of continuity, maybe a guy like Deuce McBride should get more opportunity next year and just develop. It's also like they could get better but not be any further next year. Like, they could be a better team, but next year a couple guys are injured, all right? Or OG Anunoby, who has a history of injuries, or Mitchell Robinson, who has a history of injuries, just isn't quite at 100% next year. Or the 4 20-point comebacks you had in this playoff run, all of a sudden you only have one of them and 3 of them don't go your way. And now you get bounced in the second round instead of winning that second round matchup. So many things change year to year. And you need really so much luck to go your way. Like, obviously injury luck you need shooting variance. There's just so many different things that go into it that New York could even have a better roster next year. And just a couple things don't go your way in the second round of the playoffs. And now it looks like a disappointment because in 2025, you went to the ECF and now we added these players in 2026. All of a sudden we got bounced in the second round. So it's a tough place to be in New York because there's no easy way to make this roster better. Like, Karl-Anthony Towns and a couple pick swaps aren't getting you anything. I don't really know how the NBA is valuing Karl-Anthony Towns right now. Like, this is someone who's going to be making on average $55 million for the next 3 years. And while he's one of the best offensive bigs in the NBA, he's also one of the worst defensive bigs in the NBA. And it's going to be really difficult to build a competent championship roster around him. Like, last year, he had Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels and Ant Edwards, like one of the best defensive cores that we saw in the NBA, and he was still getting exposed. And that doesn't even take into account like just the stupid fouls that he does every single game throughout his career. That's just another layer on top of that. So it's a tough position for New York. I do think you look at next year, like this is at least one more season we could really go after. Because I think they're like 2 years away from really looking at a second apron. Once the McHale extension hits, if you do extend Mitchell Robinson, and then by then Brunson, who obviously is not like the super max, he's off like this, nice contract he's on now to like more like a $37-ish million contract. So they're still a couple years away from really looking at second apron implications. But other than margin moves around the margins that, like a Jose Alvarado, like you mentioned, a Herb Jones would be huge, don't get me wrong. It's hard for New York to really take that next step like we saw a team, Boston a couple years ago, who goes and gets Drew Holiday and Porzingis, or the Thunder this past offseason who get Caruso and Hartenstein. Those type of moves just aren't available for New York, because last season, those were the moves they made by trading all the picks from McHale, by making the swing for Karl Anthony Towns. Those were their KP and Drew moves, and those were their Caruso and Hartenstein moves. And although it definitely got you a step further, because you went from a second round exit to an ECF team to being 2 years away, it's hard to find one more move that could really take you from an ECF team, like you mentioned, Joel, to a championship level team.
It was frustrating watching this team not being maximized for most of the playoffs. I thought some of the lineup choices from Tibbs I questioned them. There were very few moments where I thought that he did what he was supposed to do. And the way I view the Knicks right now is that's the most they can do, is getting one player.
Can I ask you, instead of the player, the coaching change, is that the next step for you?
Tibbs is safe, according to everybody.
I think Tibbs is safe because of what he did. A lot of Knicks fans aren't really happy about
Brunson loves him too.
Brunson does love him. I think that Tibbs,
most guards do.
He gets a chance to right his wrongs and create a different offensive philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Cat was not maximized this year on offense. The Brunson and Cat duo, Brunson only assisted on 5 of Cat's buckets in the Eastern Conference Finals.
It's insane.
Brunson and Cat, the duo, in theory, sounded
the eye
great.
test though,
because
we
they
saw
didn't
it during
get going.
The ECF, they were not like the Knicks were at their best when one of them was on the bench.
So there's room for them to get better. And there was an article written on The Athletic by James Edwards III about the Knicks and about this season, and how after every major playoff loss, he needed to hold a player meeting. PJ Tucker did with the Knicks players. After they blew game 1, they held a player meeting. After they got embarrassed in game 5 in the Boston series, they had a player meeting, and he had to get them all on the same page. There's still communication issues on defense. They referenced how there's been people very frustrated with Cat and his defense communication-wise. And that's the question I have for the Knicks moving forward is, how do you view Cat? Do you view him as a center, or do you view him as a power forward? As a center, you need to be able to vocalize and communicate on defense and make sure everybody is on a string. He is a very poor defender, but he can only be maximized on offense at the 5, but he could only be hidden on defense at the 4. So for me, that's a question that I have for the Knicks is, how do you view Cat long term? Because it's going to give us a sneak peek in how the Knicks are going to manage this offseason. If they view him more as a 4, I think Mitchell Robinson becomes less expendable because they're going to need his defense alongside Cat. If they view Cat as a 5, then I think Mitch becomes more expendable because they want to be more offensive oriented. They want to be faster. So those are the questions I have for them, and they're going to have to answer those this offseason.
Weren't the Knicks worse offensively when it was Karl Anthony Towns and Mitch on the floor together?
Just those two?
I don't remember.
Just in general, I feel like the offense was not great when the two of them were on the floor together. Or am I crazy? That's the only thing that I think about, because when I think about the Knicks, and I obviously think about the shooting that they have.
Who's also their point guard out there?
That's also a good question. But that in that lineup, it's Jalen Brunson.
Oh, okay.
So with Cat and Mitchell Robinson on the floor in the playoffs, 165 minutes plus 24, 116.6 offensive rating. When Mitch was off the floor and Cat was on the floor in the playoffs, 112.8 offensive rating in the playoffs and 474 minutes.
Nice.
So the better offensive rating was with Mitch.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that leaves you optimistic. My thing is, when I think about then you don't maximize Karl Anthony Towns, then I guess that doesn't matter. because obviously the offense was still really good when the two of them were out there. I just do look at needing another player on that court that can shoot the three. You can only have one of those guys. You can't have two. And obviously Josh Hart was not in that starting lineup, but when Josh Hart is on the court, and if you're going to have Mitch Robinson on the court at the same time too, things get dicey there. Not many stretch fives exist. Karl-Anthony Towns just so happens to be arguably the best one.
Porzingis
is available.
He can defend. That's the thing.
He don't show up though in playoffs.
Shit, damn.
Does not.
He also
couldn't breathe.
I was gonna say he's very
Dating
sick.
back to Dallas,
He put a picture on his Instagram of him smoking.
He showed up
hookah. They
once.
shouldn't have done that, brother.